Y'all, I learned a whole lot making this video. I took apart 2 perfectly good welding machines just so that if you ever had to, you would have a better idea what you're looking at. Now, I know you guys know that welding machines come in many shapes, colors, sizes, that whole 9 yards. They come as engine drives, transformers, inverters, but the idea is still the same. We're gonna harness energy, harness electricity, and melt metal with it. Today, I'm gonna take apart this Typhoon 230 because I need to replace this little dense panel. All Everlast machines come with a 5-year warranty, so you just gotta call in, tell them what's up, and they'll try to send you a part. And the only way to access this dense panel is to actually get everything off. So while I'm at it, I might as well take this Thunder 255 apart and see what I can compare between the two. Now remember, you have your transformers and your engine drives and your inverters. Today we're specifically talking about inverter machines. It's very important they all tick a little different, right? For inverters specifically, we're going to be taking the AC power, which comes from our power lines, into our houses, shops, homes, whatever it may be, and turn that AC power into low frequency, high voltage DC. Then the machine's going to take that DC power and turn it into AC. That's where it's going to take these insulated gate bipolar transistors and switch off that DC power 1,000 times a second. And that is going to create a AC high frequency signal. And then the machine's going to take a small transformer and take that high frequency signal and step it down to a much lower usable welding voltage, but also maintaining high amperage. And then finally, that high frequency AC is rectified once again to a nice smooth DC output for whatever your welding needs may be. Even though the technology behind inverters is practically the same, things look a lot different. But relax, you need to know that pretty much everything's going to have a lot of the similar features as far as the externals go. You just got to figure out where it's laid out on the machine. You're pretty much always going to have your positive and negative terminals. Depending on which way you plug those in will be the polarity that you choose. Sometimes the polarity switch is inside the wire feeder, so you need to know where that's all located. And if the machine is an AC TIG welding machine, to switch it to AC, it usually is just a switch on the face of the machine or inside those settings. If you have a gas process like TIG or MIG, you're probably going to have some gas inlets somewhere. And if you come across a test that is a TIG welding test, but you see the machine doesn't have an inlet, you can still run an adapter block and bypass the machine and still run it through a TIG torch. If the machine is a wire fed process, it's probably going to have a wire feeder. Familiarize yourself with the spool, where the spool sits, the wire drive mechanisms, the tensioners, the drive rolls, all that good stuff to make sure that you're familiar with it when you can go about troubleshooting it. Sometimes the wire feeders aren't built into the machines and they're separate and they plug into the back of the machine so that both of them get power. This machine can use a water cooler and even has a plug for the water cooler in the back. Again, just knowing your way around the machine, even looking at these stickers that should be on the side that tell you the duty cycle of the machine, depending on whether you're 110 or 220 or single phase, dual voltage, whatever it may be, you'll see that all right here. Not only that, but it'll tell you what kind of power it pulls so you know what kind of breaker you need for your shop or what kind of generator you can use to push it. And then some machines are going to have these little holes for remotes, right? Where you got these 10 pins, 20 pins, 14 pins, whatever, and that's going to hook up your foot pedals, your thumb switches, your spool guns, whatever it is, that's where your remote plugs in. As a welder, you need to know your way around just about any welding machine so that you can get it set and you can troubleshoot it. And that's pretty much anything on the outside of a welding machine. If you're going to have to start taking things apart to get on the inside, you're kind of going above your pay grade or below it. I'm not really sure, but you're going to end up changing your title from a welder to a technician. It really doesn't matter what welding process you really like. You just need something to get the job done. Shout out to today's video sponsor, Everlast. For your first machine, you don't need something like this bad boy right here. This thing is an absolute powerhouse. But Everlast Welders comes out with a bunch of different options. If you go to their website, there's a whole slew of welders you can choose from MIG, TIG, stick, multi-process, everything. There's a 5-year warranty on them. They're usually of the cheaper variety of machines. By the time you got 5 years of use out of it and say it blew up, man, you could go get another one for cheaper than the other guys. But hey, it's a good machine. Now, you don't have to be a technician to know some just really cheap insurance and maintenance when it comes to any welding machine. When you take the panels off, just go ahead and blow them out. Take some compressed air and just get all the schmutz out, all the metal dust and all the debris. If you thought dust is bad, just think what metal dust is like. And what a welding shop does to machines is the worst for them. Of course, metal stuff is conductive, and we're working with electricity, so you can imagine what all that metal conductive dust all over stuff could be bad for it. And also check your fans. Make sure your fans are running. If one seems like it's running a little sluggish or slow, see if you can't do some sort of maintenance and clean it up to get it back and running. Obviously, a fan not running is a bad problem, but even one that might be running too slow can short circuit some stuff and cause some issues internally with the machine and some of the boards. All you got to do is just a little compressed air to get these machines lasting a lot longer. Now, this is where I level with you guys. I don't know much more than that. Being able to, of course, like troubleshoot like where a loose cable might be or something that might look burnt, I can look in there and kind of follow things from the outside that run inside. But outside of that, that's pretty much my knowledge. So I had to call my good friend Brad White, who is a good welder, good personal friend, and he knows these Everlast machines inside and out. He helped me out, and now we can go about seeing which piece is what and what they do. Now, I will remind you that these machines do have capacitors, which do store a little bit of energy. You know, that's what the capacitor does. And usually by the time you unplug the machine and get all the housing and stuff off, those capacitors now don't have anything left in them. Keep a voltometer on you. Make sure that you see where the power's at. Let those capacitors drain a little bit, but you should be good if it's been like 20 or 30 seconds after you unplugged it to start fiddling with all these bits. One good reason why you might want to use one of these voltometers is to check if you have open circuit voltage. That could be a really good starting point to troubleshoot your welding machine. And all you really do is turn the voltometer on and start sticking it in the terminals where power should be coming from. And you should see voltage or open circuit voltage coming from those terminals. That's your output right there. If you don't have that open circuit voltage, it could be maybe the inverter board might be something wrong with it. But if you do have open circuit voltage, it might be something to do with, I don't know, maybe your control board. Again, things all to consider. Keeping a voltmeter when it comes to troubleshooting your welding machines is one of those tools you kind of need to have. Now again, most inverters might have some similar parts, but these two machines are very different. This machine is a multi-process machine. This one is more of a TIG stick AC/DC dedicated welding machine. So it's going to have some same parts, some similar, some different. Some of those similar parts is the power control board, which is right here and right here on the Typhoon. These two boards are what powers the control board, which is right here and right here on this machine. And this is basically all your controls, your features, your accessories, all your switches, all your bells and whistles, right? Those are what these two boards are in charge of. If you look at the back of each one of these machines, you'll have your input power and then this breaker on the back. Of course, that's where we're going to turn everything on and where you can kind of track that power as it runs throughout the machine. These big boards right on the face of the machine, this is your inverter board, right? This is what really makes these machines tick as far as the inverter side goes. As far as these transformers, the one on the top here of the Typhoon and another one at the bottom of the Typhoon are going to be those smaller transformers, whereas this Thunder only has one transformer and it's behind the inverter panel. Now what you'll also find behind these inverter panels are your capacitors, your relays, you'll have your input power running up through there, you'll have some heat sinks and even a little temperature sensor. You'll see these big coils right up front here. This is that rectifier. Remember how I told you these inverters take that AC current and they like to smoothen it out. Say if you had an off-road vehicle, these rectifier helps smooth the suspension out. This helps smooth the arc out. That's what those rectifiers are for. Both of these machines also have a high voltage board, which the high voltage board is right here on the Typhoon and right here on the Thunder 255. And don't get the high voltage confused with high frequency, although to the untrained eye they're basically the same. And that refers to the arc start where we're able to keep our tungsten off the workpiece as we strike the arc. The high frequency basically sends a signal 1,000 times a second, which is able to take a high voltage and deliver it at a low current, and you're able to jump that arc across from the tungsten to the workpiece to get going. And it's really safe for the tungsten, the operator, all that good stuff, whereas a high voltage is a little different. High voltage is a little bit different because it just takes that little extra push to get through the electrical resistance of the air around the material and the tungsten and ionizes it and turns it into plasma, and then it's able to jump that arc between your tungsten and the workpiece, and it's again super safe. And if you did one side by side, you'd be like they're the same. But as far as inside the machine, the high voltage board differs from the high frequency in the sense of the gap. You have to set a little bit of a gap with your high frequency machines, and sometimes if the machine gets jarred or bumped around or over time, that little gap can change and you have to sometimes go in and fix it. Now again, these have two different applications and functions, so they're going to have some different stuff. Like this Thunder 255 has this cold feed power supply, this little silver block back here. And that's basically its pulse generator for its pulse MIG. And then it has its pulse driver up here, and that's going to really control a lot of those pulse functions for its pulse MIG capabilities. And this is a MIG machine, so it's not going to have a primary output board like this machine right here on the Typhoon. Let me turn that around. I don't know if y'all can see that. This is like a dedicated AC/DC TIG machine, so it has this primary output board across the side here, whereas this MIG machine won't have one of those usually. So not only will it have this primary output board, but it'll also have this little board on top here. This control board is specifically for the fan alone. And being that this is an AC/DC TIG machine, it has a transducer relay up here, and that kind of really helps regulate those two polarities whenever you're using them. Probably the biggest way you can damage this machine is through this little board that's facing upside down in this Typhoon here. That's your AC absorption board. When you're doing AC TIG welding on inverter machines, you're really not supposed to use green tungsten. Prior to contrary belief in what's taught in a lot of textbooks, green tungsten was great for transformer machines, but for inverters, there's some power differences, and you can actually damage this AC absorption board just by running green tungsten. It's not that running like high amperages over a long time is going to damage it. It's just doing that badly is going to damage it. So if you're like dipping your tungsten or sticking your electrode to your work and you're letting it just sit there, or if you're just welding and you're like because you keep like I know that was a great example, but if you're really hitting the top of that puddle, you're just back feeding power back to that thing, and you're going to end up damaging it. So keep that in mind. If you want to keep your machine weld, try not to weld awful. Now, I want to reiterate, as a welder, you really don't need to know how to get in there, but I think it does help knowing what those little bits and pieces do on the inside of your welding machine. You know, even if you have to convey it to customer support a little bit easier. That's going to make you a little bit more dangerous in the long run, being able to work and troubleshoot on these machines. And now we got it buttoned back up. We can just flip her back on and... God, and I didn't even replace the DINS connector. It's not turning... Where did that screw come from?